Off the coast of Patagonia, a young orca does something that should not be possible. It throws itself onto the beach. Not accidentally, not in distress, on purpose, surging forward on a wave, sliding up onto wet sand, seizing a seal or sea lion in its jaws, and then working its body back toward the water before the next wave arrives. The whole sequence takes seconds, and if it goes wrong, wrong angle, wrong timing, too far up the shore, the animal doesn't come back. This technique is called intentional stranding. It is one of the most physically dangerous hunting methods used by any marine mammal. And the young orca attempting it on that beach didn't invent it, didn't stumble into it, and didn't figure it out alone. It learned it. An older female, its mother or a senior member of the pod, stayed close during practice runs, demonstrating the approach angle, the commitment of the surge, the precise moment to release and retreat. The young animal tried, failed, tried again, not once but repeatedly, under the watch of older females until the movement became reliable. What you were watching on that beach is a lesson, not instinct. Instinct doesn't require years of supervised practice. Instinct doesn't involve an older animal positioning itself to demonstrate a technique to a younger one. This is something closer to teaching, and that single detail changes how we should understand this animal entirely. They are not the smartest hunters in the ocean because they kill. They are the smartest because they teach the kill. The easy version of the orca story starts with size. Up to 6 metric tons, up to 8 meters long, the largest member of the dolphin family, fast enough to close distance before most prey can react, armed with teeth built to grip and hold. All of that is real, and none of it is the interesting part. If orcas were simply large and fast, they would be impressive in the way a great white shark is impressive, a body refined over millions of years for a specific kind of violence, formidable and relatively predictable. What makes orcas genuinely strange isn't the hardware, it's what they do with situations. Orca hunting groups don't just pursue animals, they pursue circumstances. They identify the weakest individual in the group. They use the environment, ice, shoreline, shallow water, open ocean depth as part of the strategy. Different animals in the group take different roles. Some block escape routes, some drive prey toward others, some wait. There is coordination happening that no human observer can always easily read between animals that have hunted together long enough to know their position without being told. Against large whales, pods have been documented running harassment campaigns lasting several hours, rotating attackers to keep pressure constant, targeting the prey's ability to breathe, working with a patience and persistence that looks from the outside more like a coordinated operation than an animal chase. The ocean is not just where orcas hunt, it is part of how they hunt. The ice floe becomes a tool, the beach becomes a trap, the open water beneath exhausted prey becomes a direction to push toward. They don't simply swim at the target, they restructure the environment around it. That requires shared understanding, a common map of the situation that multiple animals are reading simultaneously. And that kind of coordination doesn't emerge spontaneously, it is built over time, inside families, through experience passed from one generation to the next. Here's something that took marine biologists decades to fully appreciate. Different groups of orcas are not simply the same animal living in different places. In the northeastern Pacific, researchers have spent years studying distinct orca populations that share the same waters but live almost entirely separate lives. Resident orcas form large, stable, multi-generational family groups. They are vocal, social, and feed almost exclusively on fish, primarily salmon. Biggs orcas, sometimes called transient orcas, travel in smaller groups, move more quietly, and hunt marine mammals, seals, sea lions, dolphins, and sometimes larger whales. The two populations can occupy the same stretch of coastline and not interact. They communicate differently, they behave differently. The distinctions run deep enough, ecologically, behaviorally, and genetically, that researchers have increasingly treated them as separate evolutionary lineages.
They can share the same ocean and still live in completely different worlds. The gap between them is not explained by genetics alone. It is ecology, learning, and culture working together over generations. A resident calf grows into a resident way of life. A Biggs calf grows into another. The prey choices, the movement patterns, the social structures, the ways of communicating, these are transmitted through behavior, through observation, through the slow accumulation of technique passed from parent to offspring across decades. A shark is born with most of its hunting program already inside its body. An orca is born into a family that will spend years teaching it how to be a member of that specific family, with that family's specific prey, methods, and traditions. The shark has a body. The orca has a culture. And cultures, unlike bodies, can change. They can learn new things, lose old ones, spread new behaviors across a community. They are alive in a way that instinct simply isn't.
Every orca pod sounds like itself. Researchers studying orca acoustics have identified distinct call types, patterns of clicks, whistles, and pulsed sounds that are specific to individual pods and remain consistent across decades. A recording of a particular family group made 40 years ago will contain acoustic signatures that appear in recordings of the same lineage today. The sounds are learned, not inherited. Young orcas acquire the vocal patterns of their family by listening and by practicing, the way a child absorbs the rhythm and accent of the household it grows up in. These dialects serve more than one purpose. They coordinate movement. They maintain bonds across distance. They carry identity. An orca's calls communicate membership and history in ways that allow orcas to recognize familiar animals and distinguish them from strangers. Pods that share overlapping ranges but different traditions maintain those distinctions partly through sound. The voice of the family is one of the mechanisms that keeps the family coherent across time. What makes this significant is not simply that orcas communicate, many animals do. It is that their communication is culturally variable. Different groups developed different systems, and those systems are transmitted through learning, not biology alone. They encode something about who you are and where you come from. An orca born into a pod doesn't just inherit a body suited for cold water and deep hunting. It inherits a voice. And that voice connects it to every generation of that family that learned the same sounds before it was born. Not all orca hunting looks alike. Across different populations and regions, researchers have documented strategies so different from each other that they might as well belong to separate animals. They don't. They belong to different traditions. Learned techniques refined within specific families over time and passed through generations like any other inherited skill. The first is known as wave washing. In polar waters, certain pods have developed a coordinated method for hunting seals resting on ice floes. Rather than waiting for the seal to enter the water, the orcas line up and swim in formation toward the flow, generating a wave large enough to wash the seal off. The coordination required is precise. Animals must time their movement together and maintain spacing to produce a wave of the right size and direction. It cannot be performed alone, and it cannot be executed reliably without practice alongside animals who already know their role. The second is intentional stranding, the technique that opened this video. What's worth emphasizing is not just the physical difficulty, but what the learning process reveals. Families that practice stranding invest significant time in training young animals. Adults participate actively in that process. The technique is treated within the pod like something that must be passed on carefully, because an animal that gets it wrong can die on that beach. Skills that dangerous don't get improvised, they get inherited. The third is more precise and harder to dismiss.
Two male orcas known to researchers as Port and Starboard, operating off the coast of South Africa, became documented specialists in hunting sharks, including great white sharks. In observed cases, the method has involved flipping the shark into tonic immobility, a paralysis response triggered by inverting the animal, and then extracting the liver. A shark's liver is dense with oil and calories. Port and Starboard weren't consuming the whole animal, they were targeting a specific part of it with what appeared to be deliberate anatomical knowledge. In 2024, Starboard was documented killing a juvenile great white shark in under 2 minutes. A broadly similar pattern has been reported in the Gulf of California, though whether this represents an independently developed strategy or some form of behavioral spread remains an open question. 3 different environments, 3 distinct methods, the same species. What separates them is not strength, it is environment, education, tradition, and the transmission of learned skill across generations. In the North Pacific, there are female orcas over 80 years old. They stopped reproducing decades ago, and yet they remain central to how their family group functions, leading movements during periods of food scarcity, positioning themselves at the front of the pod, guiding younger animals toward resources that they, through decades of accumulated experience, know where to find. Orcas are one of only a handful of species on Earth in which females undergo menopause, ceasing reproduction while continuing to live for decades afterward. From a purely evolutionary standpoint, this requires explanation. An individual that stops reproducing is no longer passing on its own genes directly. That strategy only makes sense if the individual is contributing something valuable in another way. Research in recent years has suggested that it does. Pods with older post-reproductive females show higher survival rates, particularly during lean periods when food is difficult to locate. The matriarch's value is not reproductive, it is informational. Decades of navigating the same waters, tracking prey movements across seasons, remembering locations that produced food during previous shortages, carrying a map of the ocean that no younger animal in the group yet possesses. All of that becomes a resource the entire family draws on. She may no longer be the fastest hunter in the pod, but when the salmon don't appear where they should, the family follows her. Their deadliest weapon may not be teeth, it may be memory. Since around 2020, something unexpected has been happening off the Iberian Peninsula. A group of orcas has been approaching sailing vessels and interacting with their rudders, mouthing them, pushing against them, in some cases applying enough sustained force to damage or disable steering. Several hundred interactions have been documented. A number of boats have been seriously damaged. A small number have sunk after rudder failures left them unmanageable in open water. Researchers have been careful about how they characterize this, and that care is worth taking seriously. The word attack implies intent to harm, which requires assumptions of the animal's inner experience that science cannot currently support. What most experts have cautiously suggested is that it looks more like play, exploration, or socially transmitted curiosity, a behavior that may have begun with one or a few individuals and then spread through the population because orcas observe each other and replicate interesting behavior. That is the part of this story that matters most. A behavior appeared, it spread, it established itself across a community within a few years without any obvious biological change driving it, only observation and imitation. Cultural transmission, happening in real time, visible to human observers. It is not revenge, it is not malice, it is something perhaps stranger, a new behavior, born from curiosity, becoming tradition before our eyes. A great white shark is a weapon, an extraordinary one, 400 million years of refinement concentrated into something close to perfect for its purpose. Fast, precise, and essentially fixed. It hunts the way it hunts. It has always hunted the way it hunts. The ocean can change around it, conditions can shift, and the shark's response is the same body running the same patterns. The weapon does not update itself. An orca pod works differently. It remembers. It learns new techniques and discards ones that stop working. It carries the experience of its oldest members as a live-in resource rather than letting it disappear when an individual dies. It can acquire a behavior that didn't exist a generation ago and spread it across a community within years. When a young orca surges onto a beach for the first time, attempting the angle and timing it has watched an older female demonstrate dozens of times, it is not just hunting. It is receiving something, joining a lineage of knowledge that predates its birth and will outlast its death. The orca is not the apex predator of the ocean because it is the most powerful animal in the water. It holds that position because its intelligence is collective, because it compounds over generations, because the family does not start from scratch each time a new animal is born. The ocean's most dangerous predator is not an animal. It is a family memory moving through cold water, getting sharper with every generation that carries it forward.